Abeokuta now, Abi?
Hello, good morning. It's glad to have you join us on International Desk for this week. My name is Mojisola Sholaja. Now, this week we are turning our focus on the Ethiopia-Somaliland port deal, and this is no doubt the strategic Horn of Africa region where a significant event is underway. The recent Ethiopia-Somaliland port deal has sparked intrigue and debates globally, and I urge you to join us as we unravel the implications, the geopolitical significance and potential ramifications on this groundbreaking event. Joining us to provide expert insight and analysis on the deal is retired Commodore Adekunle Olawumi, former Deputy Defense Advisor for France, with concurrent accreditation to 8 other European countries. He is currently the HOD Criminology and Security Studies, Chrisland University, Abeokuta. He is also an expert in international relations and strategic studies. You're most welcome.
Thank you very much for having me once again.
Yes, the Ethiopia-Somaliland port deal crisis, it's something that is, it's a kind of the talk of that region, you know. I want you to just briefly tell us what the deal is all about, what surrounds it.
Thank you very much for that question. Basically, I must tell you that the Horn of Africa is a geostrategic place for the world powers, particularly the United States, Britain, and the NATO members. That is very significant for me to start as a base. But the deal itself is just as simple as to allow Ethiopians to have access to the Red Sea. And how can they do that? Is by having diplomatic relations with either Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia, or Somaliland. So that's what really happened. They are desperate to have access to the sea because the existing arrangement between Ethiopia and Somalia is extremely expensive. They are spending millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to be able to have access to the port of Akaba, which is in Somalia. And when you see how much they spend every year to be able to sustain that arrangement, it's just on Ethiopia to find an alternative place to have access to the Red Sea and the Aegean Sea, and they approach Somaliland and they oblige them. Unfortunately, Somalia feels threatened. It's even accusing Ethiopia of trying to annex their country. So I think that is the basic issue that is at stake. Maybe as we go on, we may look at the international environment and what's actually led to some of these things.
You know, you mentioned Eritrea the other time.
Yes.
And I recall that Eritrea kind of pulled out. It was Eritrea that sort of shortchanged Ethiopia from having access to the Red Sea. Yes. So is it possible for Ethiopia to go back to Eritrea?
You see, the story is really far back when you talk about Eritrea and Ethiopia. You know, before this present president of Ethiopia, Eritrea and Ethiopia has always been at loggerheads. They have a lot of area they've captured in Eritrea that was recently returned back to Eritrea. And I think the Ethiopians they missed the opportunity when they had that skirmishes with Eritrea. They could have focused on the southeastern parts of Eritrea and break through to the Red Sea instead of fighting on a very, very wide front, and they were capturing little areas. They missed the opportunity, and it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, for Eritrea to trust Ethiopia again.
Ah, that's a very strong word, the word trust.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bone of contention between Ethiopia and Somali now, you know. You said Eritrea is, Ethiopia is trying to find its way into the Red Sea. But unfortunately, though some claimed Somaliland is self-independent, right?
Yeah.
And Somali feels Somaliland is still part of its territory. What has been going on since 1991 when Somali recognized itself as a sovereign state?
It's very complex, actually. You know, in 1991, when they set the timing, basically, remember they got their independence few days. That Somaliland got their independence few days before even Somalia. So they're trying to prove that they are the older states and they're supposed to control the land. But remotely, I don't see why Somaliland should not be recognized, that's my personal opinion, by the African Union or by the United Nations. If you look at Somaliland today, they are better positioned to claim sovereignty and to be a state of themselves because they have everything that is needed to claim to be a state. The only thing they are lacking is the recognition by the United Nations and by the African Union and by the Arab League. Otherwise, Somaliland is better placed. They are more peaceful, they are more prosperous. They've had 3 presidents, and the last election was the most peaceful, even in Africa. Compared to Somalia that cannot even control Mogadishu. They cannot even control anywhere within their sovereign states compared to Somaliland. And I don't know why they shouldn't focus. I'm thinking that the Somalia should focus on developing and creating peaceful environment and earning statehood in the real sense than to be disrupting or disturbing Somaliland that is already, better place to actually enjoy their place in the community of nations.
Now, let's talk about the deal now. Ethiopia will get part of, will have access to build a port base, a naval base, right? And in return, Somaliland will have access a certain percentage of the international, the airport, Ethiopia Airlines, and of course it is seeking recognition as a sovereign state. But left to me, if you look at the turn of events now, it seems Ethiopia is kind of backing out, is not ready to recognize Somaliland as a sovereign state. Why the fears?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important question because that brings me to the remote cause of the challenges that we are seeing. As an African, I believe that it's a win-win situation for Somalia and Somaliland and Ethiopia. It's a win-win situation. It's going to make, if this agreement goes through, it's going to make that area to develop. Recall that Somalia has a lot of gas and oil, and Turkey is there. They have also speculated that Somaliland has a lot of oil and gas. Then the strategic position in the Red Sea and the Aegean Sea, the choke point where all these traffics, and it's not far from Afghanistan, it's not far from Yemen, it's not far from the trouble area within the region where the Americans are very interested, the British are very interested, the Russians are there, the Chinese are there. So that is the remote cause. It's easier for the United Nations, the AU, to recognize Somaliland as a state. But if they do, then they may not be able to control Somaliland as they would have loved. So that is why they will rather support Somalia and ensure that Ethiopia, Eritrea conflicts continue, and they can continue to have their peacekeeping operations going the way they want. The African peacekeeping missions are there. And even surprised, even the UAE is showing interest there because of their problem with Yemen. So the remote cause of some of these positions taken by international players is because they want to still be able to control the area in question, that is Portland, Somaliland, Somalia, Eritrea, and Ethiopia. Because if they can control that area, then it's easy for them to manage the expansion of China and maybe Russia as well, and Iran and Afghanistan. So the remote cause of what you're saying is the interest of the powers. Italians were there, as I mentioned before, the Russians were there before, I mean the Soviet Union, and that place is so strategic for, let's say, the next Third World War, okay? So that is why, that your question is very, very germane. The easiest thing to do now is to allow Ethiopia to have access to the sea so that the economic and military cooperation among those nations can make them to be independent in the real sense of it. But the Western powers will not allow it to happen.
But that would be a disadvantage to Somalia, don't you think?
Not really. I did a lot of research and I discovered that the Somalia president is just is a puppet of the West. He's just saying and doing what he was asked to say. It's not going to be a disadvantage. What he should focus on is peace and safety of his state, and not trying to go to war with Ethiopia. He cannot. Ethiopia is about 126 million people, and with a powerful army. In fact, Ethiopian troops are in Somalia already doing peacekeeping. So instead of trying to go to war with Ethiopia, with Somaliland, Eritrea is also there, I think Somalia should try to see how he can develop peacefully, because he has the longest coast in that corridor and he has a lot of resources there. What the Ethiopians are looking for is just a 20-kilometer stretch of coastland where they can put their naval base and have access to port. I don't think it should be an issue. Somalia truncated their own agreement because they were charging exorbitantly very high, and it's like an economic situation, demand and supply. If your own price is too high, then I'll look elsewhere. So they should allow them. It's a win-win situation for the Horn of Africa.
Well, the Horn of Africa is somehow can be said to be a troubled region. If this is added, this crisis is allowed to escalate, don't you think it will add to it? Considering the fact that Al-Shabaab is also saying no, this deal shouldn't continue.
Absolutely, because if Al-Shabaab decide to take side with Somalia,
it's already taken sides with Somalia.
I mean, yeah, as it is. If it takes side with Somalia as it is, then it's going to make Somaliland to be ungovernable. That's what's going to happen. Right now, Somaliland is still governable.
Peaceful.
But if Al-Shabaab gets involved, maybe it may be a relief for the Somalia right now, and they will just transfer their terrorist activities to Somaliland. But I know in international relations, whatever you are saying, these countries are proxies to different world powers, and it's painful when you see them being used as proxies against each other. I don't see why Egypt should not support or try to come to terms with a peaceful region. Egypt, they're a very powerful player there. And I don't know why the Arab League should be working at cross purposes, with maybe African Union, for instance, And I also don't see why African Union cannot really ensure that there's peace and prosperity in the Horn of Africa. I mean, it's been a long time coming. The Americans have been causing a lot of problems there. The Italians did their own, the British did their own, and the African Union are just there like just watching events over decades of insecurity in Somalia. Why is Somalia insecure? The people in Somalia are almost homogeneous. So they are a proper set of a nation state. Why are they unstable? It's because the players there, the foreign players are the ones causing some of these skirmishes. You talk about Al-Shabaab, talk about ISIS, talk about Boko Haram, talk about ISWAP. These are proxies of Western powers. And we should begin to be wise in Africa. EU is a disappointment.
We'll talk better on that, but before then, let's quickly take a short break. We'll be right back.
Think about Africa. Think about Nigeria. Think about the rich cultural heritage. A land flowing with milk and honey, whose beauty is in her delicacies, unique fashion, with fertile land, full of mineral resources, with captivating landscape and human resources. Our norms, values, and traditions tell our stories, which evokes the African and Nigerian spirit of oneness and togetherness. I am proud of Africa.
I am proud of Nigeria.
We are proud of our rich cultural heritage.
Welcome back. You're still watching International Desk live on Ogun State Television, Abeokuta, the People's Tele. We're still talking about the Ethiopia-Somaliland port deal, and my guest, Dr. Adekunle Olawumi, is still in the house.
Thank you.
Let's now talk about the benefits of this deal, the benefits, how it is expected to benefit Somaliland.
I think number one is that Somaliland is going to be recognized by at least a state which is one of the most powerful states in the Horn of Africa. That's Ethiopia is going to recognize Somaliland, which is a good thing. There are other countries like Taiwan that has also recognized Somaliland as a state, even though they are downplaying that. But if you can recognize Taiwan and some of the little states, I don't see why Somaliland should not be recognized, particularly when I think Somalia cannot even govern itself. So, I mean, why are they impinging on the freedom of the people in Somaliland? That's number one. The issue of recognition is very important. And the second thing is issue of economy. If you look at Somalia and Somaliland, you see that the environment in Somaliland is conducive for business opportunity. And if they can open their ports to Ethiopia, a lot of trade is going to come in. Recall that Ethiopia is the second largest state in Africa after Nigeria. They have a huge population, and if you have 126 million people in a space and you're having business relations with such a state, of course it's going to actually affect positively.
What about the local businesses?
Of course, the local business is going to expand in Somaliland because if Ethiopia can have access to their port, a lot of goods and services will come in. And the local people in Somaliland are going to be benefiting from such a trade. Moreover, they're going to earn a lot of money in terms of excise duties and so on Ethiopia. But what is hidden that is not known is that the security of Somaliland will be enhanced because the agreement is about economy and defense. So hitherto, Somaliland, they don't have their own navy, they don't have, even though they have their defense structure, but they don't have the finance to do that. So I think they're going to benefit in terms of defense because there are strange people that are coming there these days. I talk about the UAE, I talk about Turkey. Turkey is hugely moving into that area, you know. It's also signing agreements with Somalia on issue of economic, defense, oil and gas. So why can't Somaliland do the same? That's the question, because it's going to benefit them economically, in terms of security, and in terms of progress and safety of their people.
Now, one issue that interests me is the fact that this deal was signed late 2023 stroke early 2024, but Somali now waited till this period to react. Why did it take such a long time?
Yeah, it's expected because usually, I must tell you that Somalia and Somaliland do not really have problems. The president of Somalia went into Somaliland and they had a meeting, I think on the 26th, 27th of December last year. And 2 days later, they signed this agreement with Ethiopia. I don't believe that they did not know that that agreement is going to be signed. And this is what is always happening in international relations. People don't tell the truth all the time. It's impossible for me to believe that the president of Somalia was in Somaliland. They had a meeting for 2 days, 26th, 27th of December 2003, and 2 days after, Somaliland signed this agreement. How can you tell me that they are not aware? Because these are diplomatic moves. There's no... So I think, to answer your question, the president of Somalia is a puppet of the West. And I'm able to say that he's actually playing the script of the West. That is why it took him 3 months to respond to something he must have known even before it was signed. And after it was signed, he had no problem with it. Then somebody must have told him, you have to do something about this. And he started running up and down like the way he for me, that's why I say the African Union, they are not as responsible as I expect them. The peace in the Horn of Africa is in the interest of the African Union, not otherwise. Because the Western powers, they have a reason why they want that choke point to be controlled by all of them. Because of the Red Sea and, you know, the way to India, ocean and so on. They need that area for strategic reasons. And if you look at Nigeria, West Africa, the Sahel region, the West, they do better when a place is inflamed. When there's raucous, there's anarchy, fighting, that is when they're able to do well. To take away your resources and to be able to continue to sell you arms and you are paying somehow back. So the reason why the Somalia president did not respond until 3 months later is because he was acting on behalf of some global powers there.
Okay, thank you so much. I believe a lot of people must have gained 1 or 2 things from this: the importance of the Horn of Africa region and the roles the Western powers are playing, and the need for leaders, you know, to kind of free from themselves from what Western powers. It is very, very necessary. So we have come to the end of International Desk for this week. Don't forget to join us same time next week for a fresh episode. Dr. Olaomi, we thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
So it's goodbye for now.